to have is regular video clips with updates and discussions on various topics from the afterlife to spiritual warfare and prophecy, current events, signs of the times. As our first attempt, please bear with us. We'll be splicing more sophisticated videos in the future, hopefully. But there are a number of issues that warrant more immediate attention. And the first installment focuses on prophecy. In that regard, I'd like to mention apparitions, including Medjugorje. I know there are some who oppose it, and I totally respect your right discerning it in that fashion. I've done likewise with various situations that others may follow. It's a fact, and a critical one, though, that a commission impaneled by the Vatican, Pope Benedict XVI, after studying Medjugorje for 4 years, theologians, psychologists, Marian experts, even several cardinals, has concluded that at least the first 7 apparitions there in 1981 are in fact, in the words of the commission, quote, credible, unquote. If the Pope okays the report and accepts its recommendations to allow official parish pilgrimages to Medjugorje and to designate it as an official shrine, this is a huge news event indeed. While the Commission has withheld judgment on more recent apparitions, thousands of them at Medjugorje, the 7 are as many or even more than some of history's most revered apparition sites, including Fatima. I say this because so many seem to distort facts about it, and also because I'd like to discuss a recent and unusual and fascinating message from this place, where alleged messages, alleged because the church has anything but accepted them, are usually extremely conservative and unalarming and measured. The message in question was reported by seer Miriana Soldo on June 2nd, 2017. And it's this part that drew my eyes in a big way. Quote, "My children, be ready. This time is a turning point. That is why I am calling you anew to faith and hope. I am showing you the way which you need to go. And those are the words of the gospel. Apostles of my love, the world is in such need of your arms raised toward heaven." And then it went on. The rest of the message you can find on spiritdaily.com. A turning point, prepared. There hasn't been verbiage that strong since the early days of Medjugorje, when the so-called secrets began to be dispensed. It doesn't mean panic, but it certainly seems, for those who believe in Medjugorje, to indicate that all is not going very well in the world, and to me it dovetails with another word of knowledge we had recently from a person who prefers to remain anonymous, which we have respected now for decades. The first of just several messages to this person came in 1990, nearly 3 decades ago, and is the subject of the book Tower of Light. Anyway, it said this, a recent word from there, this year. Quote, "A new and great evil has now come and settled and will be there for the duration. It was a choice by man, including my people, who find deception in rancor, and rancor where was ordained love. Not for years will an interior light return for those whose God is gold and whose love is cold. Not since times in history deep ago have my children so been skewed in what they perceive with eyes that distort and minds that form reality in a way that has no true destiny. Flee to St. Joseph and the Blessed Mother of the Home Oak, who tells us that brightness can be found only by those who practice the diligence of prayer amid consternation. Those who frame the future in accordance with their own time frames now find disbelief in prophecies, though they unfold around you. Let's think about this. Rancor, there's plenty of that, isn't there, in politics and so forth? Are we deceived by it? In the TV and the internet, so much on all sides of the political spectrum, so much commotion, so much fighting and arguing. And what about materialism? Well, there's certainly that, whose God is gold. We even have the gold bull of Wall Street. Billionaires now, so many billionaires, 2,000 billionaires, with homes now that are nearly $500 million. A new and great evil? Well, that of course can be many things, from transgenders and genetic manipulation to the nearly out of control, like I said, materialism. But also, of course, it can be related to what we just saw in London, and before that, Manchester, UK, and before that, Paris, and even just on this day as I video, an attack near Notre Dame Cathedral in France. Terror in the Philippines and around the world, especially in our own nation, with more than a dozen very significant acts of terrorism, including the greatest attack by a foreign entity on our soil in history with 9/11. A great evil indeed has settled, and apparently will be with us for the foreseeable future. What does "for the duration" unquote mean? Does it mean until other prophesied events, massive events, perhaps in those secrets, before they take place? They mean until we complete a purification? I've always said that events would unfold through the current times, through perhaps as late as the mid-2030s. I've been saying that since 1992. So many have jumped the gun. Look at what the word of knowledge said. Quote, those who frame the future in accordance with their own timetables now find disbelief in prophecies, though they unfold around you. In other words, that's unquote. In other words, they have gone away from belief in words of knowledge and prophecy and so forth, because what they expected and what they read into certain indications of the future have not yet occurred. We too often formulate events and time frames as if we're God's overseers. Another word of knowledge from the same anonymous person years before had said, quote, in this time, expect the era of premature expectation, but not err in the truth of the expectation itself, unquote. We take the essence of prophecy, the gist, and find guidance in prayer, knowing too that a lot of times when prophecies are dispensed, if they're legitimate, and so many are not, that what is seen or foreseen has to do with what would occur if the current state of the world continued. When things change in the world, Prophecy, perhaps, in that regard, is somewhat flexible. So we see that prophecies are not necessarily errant, just not as soon as we expect in some cases, perhaps due to God's mercy, perhaps due to so much prayer, especially the rosary, especially Mass. Those series of set time frames must be discerned especially careful in accordance with what they have claimed. Although I don't always throw out the baby with the bathwater, we have to remember what Scripture says, to take what's good and leave the rest. Upheaval, political unrest, more division in places like America. We always watch the Middle East, of course, and North Korea. But whatever events are to occur may be right out of the blue, literally. I had a special report on Spirit Daily recently that mentioned a 7-year-old who supposedly had an incredible vision whereby he saw an asteroid split into more than half a dozen pieces as it entered our atmosphere, landing from Africa and the Caribbean to the mid-Atlantic states and off the shores of the Carolinas or Florida, and also up in Nova Scotia and between North America and the UK. Even a chunk of rock as small as a football field, coming at 8 times the speed of a bullet, can have massive effects, not just devastating tsunamis if it's in the ocean, but kicking up enough dust to damage photosynthesis and therefore affecting our crops worldwide, perhaps for more than a year. A chunk of rock coming at that speed, hitting the ocean, would create a crater at the bottom of the ocean. Imagine, and epidemic is probably the likeliest thing we should pray about, be concerned about. I gotta tell you, just before I leave this issue of out of the blue asteroids, comets, bolides they call them in scientific circles, I recall visiting the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, back in 1999 to interview astronomers, the foremost experts on asteroids and comets. And I was startled by what they told me. I was startled by what we don't know, what they don't know. I thought we saw the sky all the time with all these telescopes and satellites and missions to the moon and now Mars with space shuttles. But they told me at any one time only 1 to 2% of the sky is being monitored. And perhaps more to the point, they told me they had absolutely no idea how many asteroids and comets there are even in our own solar system, stretching as they do different belts of comets beyond even Pluto. And so we watch and also remain unafraid. For during the greatest wildfire in U.S. history, a wildfire that killed thousands in Wisconsin, incinerating an area larger than the state of Rhode Island, those praying the rosary at an apparition site where the Blessed Mother had appeared were spared. In fact, the fire, even though it was moving in some places at an estimated 100 miles an hour with the temperatures of a crematorium, never crossed just a wood barrier that surrounded that 12 or 13 acre parcel of land that is now approved formally by the church as the first fully accepted apparition in U.S. history. We can run, but we can't hide. The refuge is in the cloak of our Blessed Mother. With prayer and fasting, she has said, we can not only lessen punishments, but even halt wars and suspend the laws of nature. She said this allegedly at Medjugorje, to get back to that site. You can and will be protected. And as those words of knowledge I have referenced, as far as they go, they further stated, one of them, quote, for these times you have the rosary, and even more so, praise. In union with God comes all protection, as the dark spirits are now allowed to materialize in full due to the pretense and aspirations of man. Not until the initial event will a curtain be drawn that reveals the entirety of the plan, and even then, it will be parted only slowly in the woes of purification. More on this in future videos. Pray, keep faith, remember the power of the Mass, and God bless you.